Hi, I'm Jackie Smith, the 4-H and Ag and Natural Resources educator in Delaware County, and today we're going to be talking about small ruminant dystocia, so lambs and goats, and how they could encounter some trouble during that birthing process. We have had multiple different types of birthing issues, and we're going to go through some of those in our simulators. So today with us we have some simulators of an actual ewe, which is this rubber plastic tote that we have, and then we have a birthing canal or birthing system in there. We have some little animal replicas that are baby lambs. They've got a fairly solid face and some hard structures in their legs to feel like bones, and a wonderful little tail that has been sewn on that does feel like there's little vertebrae in there. So hopefully when we practice we can actually tell what each of those parts are. So the first one that we're going to talk about is ring womb, which is when the cervix does not dilate all the way. So we want to be sure that we catch this one early. Ring womb would present as a water bag hanging out with maybe not even any pushing or straining from the ewe. Once that water bag is out for more than 30 minutes, we need to be taking some action if there's no progression of the lambs coming out, or kids. Ring womb, to describe how it feels, you would try to sleeve her or try to reach the animal. You would actually feel a blockage. It would almost be like you could not pass through. It'd be very tight. And you might be able to get 1 or 2 fingers in, but maybe not all the way through. Definitely an animal not coming out. So we're going to show you a little bit about a ring womb situation in our simulators. Remember that we are definitely want to be using sleeves as much as possible, OB sleeves or breeder sleeves we can use, and lubricant. Use as much lubricant as possible to get up in there and try to work that around, especially when we're in the scenarios that you're having to push back in, or when you're in that ring womb scenario where you're trying to open that cervix up. So like I said, ring womb would present with just a water bag hanging out and no actual pushing of the ewe. As you can see in here, we have a replica of what her cervix would be. You can probably see that my fingers can barely get through this cervix. It's so tight. There's no way a lamb's gonna come through here. So like we said, the solution would be to, over time, stretch this out and get your fingers in there, kind of like a duck, and keep stretching and stretching and stretching as much as you can. And eventually that will loosen up. The other option is to call your vet and be sure that you can get in and get a C-section. The next issue that you could encounter is malpresentations. So these could range anywhere from a breached animal to a transverse animal. What it means is that the animal is not coming out in a normal position. So you might ask, what's a normal position? A normal position would be both feet and head coming out first through the opening. So a malpresentation is anything that's not that. The first one we're going to talk about is twins and tangled legs. So a lot of times we might have a normal presentation, but it might be with twins. So we have a head of one twin, and a leg of the first twin, a leg of the second twin with the head back. So what it might feel like to you is a normal presentation, but obviously we have 2 lambs that are all mixed up in there. So when you're pulling, be sure to feel that the lambs are connected to the head that you also feel. So when we talk about twins with tangled legs, it's actually going to feel like a normal presentation, right? So I've got one head here, and I've got 2 legs. If you can see through there, I've got 2 legs. It feels like a normal presentation. 1 head, 2 legs. I go to pull and I have some resistance. Something is not right. So before I ever pull, I want to be sure that the legs that I feel connect to the head that I feel. So as you have your legs, be sure you run up the side. Yep, this front leg right here that I've got in my hand definitely matches this lamb. So I go to the other leg that I have, and it definitely does not match the one that I have. So when I'm in this situation, I want to go ahead and number these lambs. The one with the head, I'm gonna number 1, and the one with just the leg, I'm gonna number 2. So I'm gonna push lamb number 2 back if I can, as much as I can. And I'm gonna be sure I've got head number 1. I still have that leg number 1. And now I'm gonna go ahead and reach down and I'm gonna follow this head and try and get this second leg as much as I can and get that one popped up here so that I have both legs and a head. I can then start to pull and deliver this first lamb normally through the pelvic canal, through the cervix. Once I've got it out about, past the shoulders, past the rib cage, then I start pulling down towards her feet, wherever her feet may be, the ewes feet, wherever they may be at that point in time. Obviously I have a second lamb in there, I already know that. So I'll go back in, I'll get the first 2 legs and the head, and then I can deliver this lamb normally. The next presentation that we're going to talk about is breech. So when we talk about breech, there could be multiple different presentations that are happening. So you could have nothing at all, you could have just the tail, or you could have 1 leg or 2 legs that are the back legs. When you're feeling for the back legs, you're actually going to be feeling for that hawk, that pointy elbow type that's on the back leg versus the front leg. That's how you're going to be able to distinguish the two when you're feeling. Obviously the tail is going to feel like it has little vertebrae. In this animal there's a little fake pearl necklace, so that's how that would feel. So when we talk about a breech birth, we have an option or we have a decision to make. Do we want to try and push the lamb back in and spin it around, or would we rather pull that lamb or kid backwards? In most instances, if you have a really old ewe, you might have some space to turn it around. A lot of times it's going to be easier to pull that lamb out backwards, or kid. Today we've got a goat here, she's pushing pretty hard. We go back in and we feel, we've definitely got back legs. I can feel on these back legs that hawk. It almost feels like an elbow point. It's really sharp and pointy compared to that front leg. And we've got a tail. I definitely know I don't have a head. So when I've made the decision that I'm pulling this lamb or kid backwards, we want to be sure that we're going fast. Once that umbilical cord snaps, that animal is going to be taking a breath of air, and that head is still going to be inside the amniotic fluid. So we want to be sure we're going as fast as possible. So when we're pulling breech, we want to be sure we've got all 3 items, 2 back legs and a tail. So when we pull, we want to be sure we're going fast as we can. Sometimes the tails will flip up and get caught on the pelvis and the tailbone of the ewe. So you want to try and keep that down as much as possible as you're pulling this animal backwards. Like I said, we want to be as fast as possible towards that end so that the nose and mouth of the animal is back out and breathing. Our third presentation that we're going to talk about is when the head is back. So the presentation would be just the 2 feet. That's all you could feel, or that's all you could see coming out the back end of the ewe. So when we talk about that, we want to be sure we've got those front feet. If we don't, we obviously have a breech presentation. But we've got, when we talk about the head back, we've got those 2 front feet. When we're talking about having an animal with its head back and only the legs positioned, what you'll feel is just 2 front legs. Front legs, when we talk about them and when we compare them to back legs, front legs bend backwards and back legs bend forward. So as long as you know the position of the head, you're doing okay in that stance. So I know I've got some front legs here. I can feel a knee. They're bending forward, or excuse me, they're bending backwards towards the head of the ewe. But you know what? I don't feel a head here. So a good idea, or a good practical solution for this is if we have the legs and we can get the legs actually outside of the ewe's body, this is a good time to use some twine or rope, get some strings attached to those before you push them back in. So you're gonna actually wanna push them back in and then pull this head down as much as possible. Get both of those legs, which you should be able to have a hold of them if you've got some twine on them. You should be able to find them pretty easy. Once we have all 3 of those again, we are able to deliver it normally. So this is all well and good when I tell you that you should just push that animal back in or flip it around, or just go ahead, push that back, flip this leg up. It seems easy, right? It's much easier said than done. This whole time the ewe is straining against you. She's having contractions. There's a lot of back pressure just from her body and her fluid. It's very warm inside the animal and it might be very cold outside, so you as a human also have that stress on you. So when you're working with the ewe, you want to be sure if you're pushing back in, go ahead and do that when she is not pushing. Once again, much easier said than done, but try to do it when she's not having a contraction. And the same goes for the opposite. When she is pushing, that's when you ought to be pulling, if that is an option for you. So in conclusion, remember that when you're actually in a situation where you're having to pull an animal, a lamb or a goat, we want to be sure that you're staying as calm as possible. Try to imagine what you're feeling with your hands. That's also going to help you to try and get through the situation. As a general rule, pick the person in your family with the smallest hands that can actually get up in there and try to maneuver and feel around. Like I said, it's not as easy said than done. We want to be sure that you realize when you're in that situation to keep calm, cool, and collected.